I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with three body problem creators, David Benioff, Phoebe Weiss, and Alexander Woo. Guys, Three Body Problem is the #1 series in the world and has been for some time now. How does it make you feel that the rest of us are catching up with what you already knew, that this show is groundbreaking, addictive, compelling, and it's just such an easy watch. 8 episodes went by like that for me in one weekend. Tell me, how do you feel about that?
I don't know if we really already knew. I mean, honestly, until the show comes out, you never know. And Dan and I, at least, we had the same experience with Game of Thrones, where we worked so hard on that first season and had really no concept of how it would do. I remember being scared, would people in America or other places that aren't England understand the accents? I just remember thinking, I know
I
Sean
remember
Bean.
thinking, I remember thinking we have this crowd,
Yeah,
D&D.
yeah,
Everybody else was up in the air.
yeah.
So we had no idea with that one, and with this one, honestly, didn't know what to expect. And you know, it's nerve-wracking. We were down in Texas before the launch of the show, and the three of us were talking about this, and you really don't know. I mean, people can pretend they do, but I don't think there's any way of gauging like how something like this is going to play out. So it's been immensely gratifying.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine there's a lot of pressure when you're putting out a show like this with a big budget, a lot riding on it. And so far, I think so good. Let's talk a bit more about the show itself. So, Liu's novels are an unusual take on the classic first contact theme in sci-fi. It's expansive, engrossing, contending with this extraterrestrial threat to humanity. But those novels have often been referred to, as you know, as unadaptable, particularly because they're such hard science fiction, heavy on concept, maybe light on character. So talk me through the thinking behind the changes that you really had to make to the novels and why that was so important to make this show work.
Well, this was on Zoom. This was the major topic of conversation throughout most of the pandemic between the three of us was how we were going to wrestle this thing down to the ground. It was an exhilarating read for all of us, and the thing that was most important at top of mind for all of us was to preserve the spirit of those novels, the feeling that we all got from reading them. That was the key thing. We had a Zoom with Cixin Liu because of COVID, we couldn't do it in person. We wish we could have. Where he acknowledged all the challenges there would be in an adaptation. He understood the challenges of the format. And he said some changes are going to be necessary. You're going to have to make some changes. You're going to probably have to do some work on the characters because I cared frankly, more about the ideas. So it was enormously generous of him. The fact that he was a huge fan of Game of Thrones didn't hurt either. But he put his trust in us to adapt this to an entirely different medium. So one of the things that we did, because we all, from all of our past experience, are such believers in character being the central point of any great TV show. It's if there's a secret at all to the work that any of us have done, it's that. It's the connection between the viewer and the characters was what takes you from one episode to the next, and then to the next season and to the next season. And before you know it, these characters are people in your lives, and that have been in your lives for the past decade or so. And that's a hugely powerful experience. It's emotionally as real as your real friends might be. So no matter how unusual the genre might be, the key is to root it in character so that when the crazy stuff starts happening, you care about the people it's happening to. And that was the impetus behind pulling some of the protagonists in book 2 and 3 into season 1, getting all the chess pieces out on the board, as soon as possible, so that when when all the crazy things start happening, that starts happening pretty fast, you know who it's happening to, and you're already invested in them, and they have relationships with each other. So when it doesn't happen to the person on the screen, the other people in the show also care about it as well.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. And the reason, and by the way, viewers, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the show, go and watch it and then come back and watch this. A good example would be, when Jack is killed, I was really heartbroken. I was starting to really, really love that character. And that's a good sign. It means that not only did I care about the concepts and the sci-fi, but I actually care about the people. And that's not easy to do in 8 episodes with so much going on. So I was talking to Rosalind Chow, and I told her the whole thing really came together for me at the cemetery when Yi Wen-ji and Dr. Saul Durand are talking, and she asks him, "Would you like to hear a joke?" At first I thought, what is this? What are we doing here? Obviously, that becomes so critical to the plot. And it just I have to tell you guys, it blew my mind how you were able to incorporate this Dark Forest concept into the show, but in a way where it wasn't spoon-fed to us. I'm just curious what you thought about that concept, and how excited you were to bring that into the script and then obviously the show.
Well, we're in deep spoiler territory here. So if you haven't even read the books, maybe plug your ears and say la during this answer. But you're talking about an idea that I'll try to keep vague, which is central not just to the grand arc of the story, and is kind of the core idea that I think made us fall in love with it on the conceptual side. It was like, that was the thing I'd never seen before, the way I'd never thought about the universe before. I think we all responded to this really simple idea, which is, I think that what's at its heart is the simplicity of the idea. But in the scene you're talking about, Ye Wen-jie is trying to tell Saul Durand something, knowing full well that every word she says is being monitored. She's trying to tell him something without telling the other people, loosely speaking, who are listening to what she's saying. So she couches something, we don't know what, she couches it in the form of a joke, because humor seems to be the best place to hide from these creatures who haven't even figured out how to lie yet. So when deception is a mystery to you, the sense of humor is a even more obscure thing to be for an alien race to understand. And the fact that it's a weird joke that seems to kind of go nowhere makes it even like, you're going to run that through any joke algorithm is going to tell you that's not actually very funny. So it's really gratifying to hear that you liked that scene. It's gratifying to hear that when other people have said they liked it, because the idea of somebody sitting on a bench and telling a really long shaggy dog joke with a punchline that doesn't make any sense, that was a scary thing to hinge something so important on, but it should stand out for you. I guess I would leave it at that. I think that it really came down to Roz, how does she deliver this really weird monologue? And I think we all just loved what she did with it. It just seemed there's something so compellingly and believably strange about the way she put it out there, that it puts you in the same place that Saul is at, where you're listening to what she's saying and you're kind of going. And I think she did such a great deadpan that she made it funny to me. Weirdly, I figured it would be, well, this isn't going to be funny, but the way she delivered it, she was making me laugh during the joke at her delivery, because it was just she committed so much to the oddness and the deadpan strangeness of the whole thing.
It's funny because the Netflix marketing folks are the best in the business, and Jen, if you're listening, you guys are amazing. You guys are the best. But they had one funny question recently where they said, we were talking about some of the Easter eggs on the show. Would you guys mind explaining the joke in the graveyard? And we were like, no. We cannot explain the joke in the graveyard. That's one thing we can't do. But yes, it was I think everything Dan said is true. And I also just think Jovan gave one of the great befuddled expressions when he's after the sort of punchline. Just that look on his face, it kills me every time I see it. And we've now probably all seen it 42,000 times.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that. Rosamund said it was an extremely hot day. She didn't get the scene. Obviously, after Dan, I think, explained it to her and she finally understood it. I think she probably had the light bulb moment that I had and many other viewers because it's coupled with Mike Evans's interaction with the liaison about the story. Obviously, the Santi don't understand metaphor or jokes or stories. To me, that's just so genius as a concept. And I haven't read the books. I wanted to go into this show really just like completely new to it. And it was all of that stuff that came together for me that I just thought, oh my God, this show is special. So speaking of other little bits and pieces that really intrigued me, I love the Thomas Wade character. I'm looking forward to more. I mean, anything Liam Cunningham does, I'm there, I'm ready. So his laser focus on only advance to me seems like, you know, what will be humanity's guiding principle. Do you agree then that that is a really, really important part of the story that you hope to tell in future seasons?
Well, sorry, is it my turn or Alex? You look like you were about to talk.
No, I was looking
Your
at
mouth
you.
is open, like you were ready to go.
You're ready.
So you look ready.
That's just my face. I'll say this about Wade. The thing that makes him so fascinating is that you need someone like that on your side. However, his means of getting there are all, you know, he does some of the most, you know, in the moment, most sort of inhumane and cruel things that that anyone does on the show. But it's all to the larger good, and I think that makes for a really, really interesting dynamic. Having all your good guys be good and all your bad guys be bad at the same time is pretty boring. And here we have someone who's ostensibly on our side trying to save our entire species, but going about it in a way that almost no human being would do because he is so solely focused on advancing to the future and to that end goal at the expense of anything in the present moment. And that makes him a great counter for Augie, who is very sympathetic to the needs of people in the present day. And they butt heads, and they are, you know, and he keeps pulling her back in again and again and again. I think that's one of the most kind of enjoyable dynamics in the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when we had the Zoom with Cixin Liu that Alex referenced earlier, he was sitting in a boardroom, and behind him there were letters, Mandarin. There was a line in Mandarin behind him, and we don't read Mandarin, and we asked midway through this call, we said, what is that line behind you? And he looks and it said, only advance. And it was Wade's line. It was Wade's kind of catchphrase from the books that we always loved. And, you know, that's exactly what Alex just said. There's just something about that monomaniacal, and it's what you need. It's why, you know, Grant won the Civil War, but it leads to a lot of sacrifices along the way.
Yeah, and that makes the possibility of future seasons even more exciting. Speaking of, has there been any news yet from the powers that be at Netflix on season 2 or not? Or can you not say?
Our fingers are crossed. We're hopeful. And
we're
we're hard at work outlining, you know, right before we got on this call, so I was in the middle of writing something in episode, something for the outline in episode 8 of season 2, but we're, yes, nothing official yet.
Okay, well, that's good to know. All right, so we just have to be patient. The cast, of course, is incredible. Just top to bottom. Rosalind Chow, obviously, Jess Wong, who I'd never seen before, Benedict Wong, a fan favorite from a lot of genre TV and film. They anchor the cast so perfectly. Then I just wondered, was casting any of the main actors particularly challenging to get right?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge level of casting ran the gamut from casting Will, who literally the first video we clicked on. This was all during the pandemic, so there were no meetings at the casting director's office the way there would normally be. We're going down the line on the casting website, clicking on audition videos, and the first Alex Sharps was the first audition we clicked on, and we thought, oh, this is going to be easy. This guy's perfect. So the perfect person is always going to be first at the top of the stack, and you get to click on the perfect person, and we'll be done in time for dinner. But it turned out that that wasn't the case for other roles. I would say the other extreme would be young Ye Wen-jie, who we must have gone through hundreds of audition tapes of young women between the ages of, I don't know, like 18 and 30. And it was a very, very difficult one to find the right person. And we also knew that the entire impetus for the show and the emotional core of the show hinged on that person bringing you in and pulling you into their life and their predicament enough that when she got to the end of the second episode and her finger was hovered over that button, you understood why she was going to push that button and start the whole story rolling. We found Zine at like the 11th hour. We had, our other options were not to denigrate anybody. They just weren't right for the role. And Zine was under our nose, a student at USC, an acting student who had come from Taiwan, and her initial audition was really difficult because we were all on Zoom, and some people were in China and some were in Hong Kong and we were in London. She was in LA, and the connection kept dying. She's in the middle of these intense scenes trying to give it her all. Really, she doesn't have like a middle gear. She's like somebody who either is doing the job or not doing the job. And every take she does the job, even if it's a reverse and you're on the back of her head, she's acting and doing the work and feeling the feelings. And she had to keep stopping in the middle when like Derek Tsang's face would freeze because his connection died. She'd have to walk off camera. She would have to make a guttural screaming sound to get herself back on track, something that sounded like I don't even know what kind of horrible torture was happening to either her or someone else. Just exit screen right. Then she'd walk back on, she'd do it again, and this happened about 4 times. And it was just one of those things where it's the most unnatural, just difficult environment to perform in, the most dehumanized and detached environment, like this whole Zoom situation. You're not looking anybody in the face. You're like literally a little picture on a screen. And the kind of raw humanity that she brought to that situation made us all feel really great about her ability to bring it to a regular, real acting situation. She exceeded even our extreme expectations.
Yeah, Zine Zheng, when you're watching a show, you look people up on IMDb. You're like, who is that? She's amazing. She's brand new. She's got a very, very, very good future ahead of her. She's an amazing actor. Okay, so let me get through a few more things before I have to let you go. You added a 5-minute scene with Augie and Jin in a bar, which I'm very grateful for. I can see why you needed to do that. Was there anything else that you had to add or tinker with before the show was finally locked and ready for premiering?
Yeah, we did. It's funny because normally I think we probably all came from the old days of 10 years ago when he still made pilots, and he'd kind of figure some things out when he made a pilot and went from there. And there were certain things, and it's embarrassing because people always, people say, well, is it easier this time because you've already, Dan and I worked on Thrones for a long time. Alex worked on True Blood and The Terror. We all have a lot of experience in TV, and you still make these kind of rookie mistakes where it's like you show the show to smart people and you get feedback and you hear from your friends. I didn't understand this. The example I always give is from the original pilot of Game of Thrones. People got to the last scene and they didn't know that Jaime and Cersei were brother and sister, which kind of ruins the whole moment. It's like, oh, these two good-looking people are having sex. What's wrong with that? If you don't know their brother and sister, it doesn't really have the same impact. So it was stuff, there was a lot of stuff like that where we, things were not clear to people who were intelligent people. Things were, and certain things just weren't strong enough. And once we were able to cut together kind of a first pass at the season, we realized, oh, we should get this and we should get that. And some of it is just like lean into your strengths. Benedict Wong, you mentioned before, who's one of those actors and a very, very rare breed of people who he's just interesting no matter what he's doing. He can be looking at pictures on a cork board and smoking a cigarette, and I want to keep watching him. And there's just something about him, the charisma that he has. And so some of it was like, we need more Benny, and we need more of, whatever else it was. So yes, we were lucky that we had really good partners in Netflix who supported us, because we went back and got a bunch of other scenes. The bar scene that you mentioned was the very last thing we shot, but we had several other things that we shot before that, long before that. And I think a part of the first season is just you're figuring out not only the story you're telling, but how to tell the story. And where I think we're just lucky we had the opportunity to make those changes.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And my final question, we have run out of time, but we're very briefly, the three of you have been obviously involved in some really big productions. Alexander, I was a huge fan of True Blood, as bloody as it got towards the last few seasons. And of course, Dan and David, Game of Thrones, legendary show that most of us are obsessed with, and I've watched it 3 times. You had your own red wedding this time with Judgment Day, and the fact that it gets sliced like a mandolin or whatever you want to call it. I was literally gobsmacked. Literally, I don't know if that's the right word, but I really was. I thought I'd seen it all. So just very briefly, were you guys terrified or excited? Like, what was going through your mind when you knew you had to tackle that horrifying scene that's very clearly kind of explained in the books?
Well, it's maybe the most memorable sequence in the first book. So it was something that was so vivid in our minds. And one of the biggest challenges is for anyone who's read the book, they've already pictured it. They've already put up a little theater in their mind of what that's going to look like. And for us, the challenge was to either meet or hopefully exceed what you had already imagined that thing to be. The excitement was in the run up to making it, then a prolonged period of extreme tedium as we had meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting of how we were going to actually implement that. And Mickey Spira, who is a fantastic director and a meticulous director, captained that ship that was going to be sliced. And then once it was all put back together again editorially, the exhilaration of seeing that feeling that you had when you read the book and that thing that you imagined when you were planning it, when it all came back together again, just the exhilaration of having that sequence put together was really, really gratifying.
I think I think that TV is really is truly a team sport, and it's all about the collaboration and how you work with others. And that scene in particular, just drawing from every single department. I mean, the visual effects team, led by Steve Kolbeck, who we've worked with for 15 years or something now, but they did such an extraordinary job because it's so VFX heavy. But also there's a lot of, production design, the ship, those interiors and everything, like the real stuff that was built by your fellow Aussie, Deb Riley. And the editing is masterful, and the acting, Jonathan Pryce and the others, but every single department. And Mickey Spiro, as you said, the captain of the doomed ship, who's the hardest working human alive. And just, I will not forget those. I'll forget a lot of those 10-hour meetings because they were pretty forgettable, but Minky walking down the corridor while there was like LED strips along the floorboards kind of lighting up at the pace that the wires are supposed to be moving, so that she and her team could figure out when the things that are being cut, like their picture frames and backpacks and whatever else that's being cut, they know the timing of it and they can rig it so that everything is timed properly. But it all had to, get pulled off so that at the very end of everything, you don't see the seams, right? And so I just give Minky all the credit in the world for overseeing that insane scene.
Yeah, totally agree. Minky Spiro, amazing work. Guys, congratulations on a really, really amazing first season and with all the success of the show. And I look forward to seeing more and more.
Thank you so much, Rob.